This video is brought to you by Clip Studio Paint. Hello everyone, welcome. It's finally happening. Today I'm taking you along as I paint a portrait digitally on Clip Studio Paint. I want to share my process with you and how I try to maintain my traditional art style in a digital setting. I've had a lot of requests over the past year or so to share my digital process, so I am so happy to finally be making this video. As you can see, I am just using my iPad. This is an iPad Air, so it's not a huge screen. I think it's maybe 13 inches. First, I start with a rough sketch using the pencil brush that comes with the app. I do this in the same way that I would on paper. I start super rough and loose, just trying to get in the major shapes. I know that the sketch is not going to be the finished piece, so it doesn't have to be pretty. It just needs to be a solid roadmap for the painting on top. While playing around with Clip Studio Paint and its features, I've been really impressed with how close it feels to working traditionally. Even using the pencil brush on its side creates this beautiful shading effect that is so similar to using a pencil or charcoal in real life. I just haven't personally experienced this level of realism and brush responsiveness in other software. I thought it was really cool. The main thing with this sketch is just making sure my proportions are accurate, so I'm doing lots of distance comparisons throughout the head, and I also want to get in the big shadow and light shapes. Once I'm happy with the initial sketch, I like to add a sort of wash layer underneath using interesting colors and fun directional strokes. In the same way, I often tone a painting surface in real life. I find it sets a mood for the painting right off the bat, and it's also easier to build up my values from a mid-tone rather than a white surface. With the sketch all done, it is time for the fun part, the painting. I like to make a new layer on top of the sketch layer, and I do pretty much the entire painting on this one layer. I really love both the gouache and the oil brush that come with Clip Studio Paint, but I'm going to be using the gouache brush today. That's what I felt like. You can change the brush texture to canvas or paper, which gives a really subtle, realistic effect. For this one, I liked the texture set to paper. I start to build up the painting with these digital gouache layers. Initially, I focus on blocking in some of the major shapes and colors without too much blending, though similarly to how I work traditionally, I end up jumping all over the painting. To avoid too much blending at the start of the piece, I like to change the blend mode in the brush settings. I like to set the blend mode to running color at the start of the painting, and then towards the end, I will switch to the blend mode. I find this helps me create a painting that feels a little bit more like a traditional gouache painting, and it also allows me to be more selective of where I want hard edges and where I want soft edges. And being selective about your edges always leads to a more interesting painting both digitally and traditionally. Clip Studio also has this great color mixing window you can add to your workspace. I wasn't sure if I'd end up using it at first, but I ended up using it a lot. It really makes the process feel so much more like I'm painting traditionally, and I have my mixing palette out. I like to use this to find transitional colors to make soft transitions, and I find this can be more interesting than just blending all the time. I think because usually when I work digitally, I just color select off of the color wheel, and I feel like I'm not always selecting the best color for the job. I'm kind of just winging it and hoping for the best. And with the color mixing window, if, I have my skin tone and I'm like, oh, this area of the face is a little bit more blue, I can mix the skin tone with a little bit more blue, just as I would in real life. But yes, I end up using this mixing palette so much that the palette at the end of the painting ends up looking pretty cool, actually. One of the features that really surprised me in a good way is the perceptual mixing in Clip Studio Paint. In your brush settings, you can choose between standard and perceptual mixing modes. In standard mode, colors mix in a way that is typical of digital painting. The colors tend to gray out and lose their vibrancy. However, with perceptual mixing turned on, colors blend together in a manner that closely emulates the way colors mix in real life or paints mix in real life. I think this feature is particularly beneficial for artists like myself who are more accustomed to traditional painting techniques. For me, having the perceptual mixing mode turned on makes painting digitally feel more natural and intuitive. So painting digitally obviously has a lot of advantages over traditional painting, and that's coming from me, a traditional artist. You can erase and move things around endlessly. There's really no limit to what you can try. There's no messy workspace or cleanup involved, which I really like. My desk stays nice and tidy. You can also share your artwork to social media pretty much instantly. Whereas with traditional art, you have to have good lighting to take a nice picture or have an expensive scanner to create a high quality scan. When you're a mainly traditional artist, the endless capabilities of digital painting can feel like a lot, to the point where it can be hard to actually start. I've definitely felt that way before with digital painting, but I found that if I give myself steps to follow, and if I treat the process similarly to how I would go about painting a traditional painting, the whole thing becomes really fun and exciting. I'm able to work in a way that is comfortable and familiar to me, and from there I can experiment and play around with color and just try things that I'd maybe be too scared to try on a traditional painting. When I first started using Clip Studio Paint, I was worried that the interface would feel overwhelming or that there would be a steep learning curve, but it really wasn't, because you can completely customize what windows you have open and where you'd like them on your workspace. I like to keep my workspace minimal with only the tools I use frequently, and if you want an even simpler layout, you can switch to Simple Mode, which has a very clean and minimal interface. I often switch to this when I want to focus on painting for a while with very little distraction on my screen. You don't have all of the features in this mode, but it's super easy to switch back and forward between both of them, that it doesn't interfere with the workflow at all. I think it's nice to be able to see your painting on a simpler interface every once in a while. It's almost like stepping back from your painting in real life. I was struggling a bit with the left hand position in this piece. It just wasn't looking right. So I used this handy feature on Clip Studio where you can bring in a 3D model and position it in the space. I found this hand model for free in the Clip Studio assets. It was super helpful to be able to pose the hand in the exact way I wanted. And you can even adjust the lighting so it fits with the environment. But I wasn't really struggling with the lighting. For me, it was just the hand position. I find when we're struggling with a thing like a hand, we often get right in there, we zoom right in, and we fiddle with it a lot because we're trying to make it look right. We're adding all this extra detail that doesn't need to be there. For me in this painting, the hands are playing a supportive role. I want the face to be the star. So adding in all of the little creases of the skin and the fingernails or things like that would not only make the hands look kind of strange, but it would also distract from the important subject in the painting, which is the face, the head. So what I do in this instance, my tip is to zoom out, make your brushes bigger, squint, and just capture the major shapes of the hands. Don't even think of them as hands, just think of them as forms that have light and shadow, and just block that in. Because the more you zoom in and fiddle with them and try and make them look perfect, the more it looks like you struggled. In short, simplify, simplify, simplify. That way it's not that we were struggling to capture the hands perfectly. We are intentionally making a design choice for the overall look of the piece. So when I'm almost finished a piece, I pay extra attention to the edges and shapes, making sure I'm happy with everything in the composition, adding details where I want emphasis, and softening other details where I don't. I usually walk away at this point and come back to the piece with a fresh set of eyes, and these final steps bring the whole painting together, making it look more refined and complete. Overall, painting with Clip Studio Paint has been a fantastic experience. In my opinion, it's the closest you can get to traditional painting in a digital format. The range of tools and features make it a powerful software for both digital and traditional artists. I highly recommend everyone to try it out, whether you are a digital pro or you're brand new to it, or somewhere in the middle like me. If you want to try Clip Studio Paint out for yourself, they offer a 3-month free trial. I will have a link to that down below. Clip Studio Paint is available for all major platforms, including Mac, PC, and the iPad, as you see here. Please let me know if you'd like to see more digital art videos in the future. I'm really excited to keep exploring the world of digital painting and everything it has to offer. Thank you again to Clip Studio Paint for supporting my channel. And thank you also to my channel members and patrons over on Patreon. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all very soon with another video. Bye-bye!